Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Emily woke up to a wild cold. There were gaps all around her, and the stove had long since gone out. She shivered, got up, washed her face from the bottle, finished the stale piece of yesterday's bun, and drank a few sips of the cold, unpalatable tea. With a heavy sigh, she threw on a dilapidated windbreaker and went to the trades. Along the way, I asked the higher powers for only one thing. Dear God, help me to find more cardboard or bottles today, because there was no food left at all. A couple more days on water, and I would faint. My stomach was already cramping. Crab and Sour were already poking around the junkyard, as usual, despite the early hour. Emily greeted her acquaintances. Good morning, Alex and Nick. Do you mind if I join you? The tramps nodded in agreement and quietly began to resent each other. Such a teacher. What am I, Alex? I'm a crab, period. Because I'm dragging my right leg because of an old injury. She's the high society. She's weird. Not a word about herself, more silent or smiling. She doesn't look like a tramp, that's all. I don't like her. She doesn't belong here. The second bum hissed at his friend. Don't mess with her. She's a convict. They say she did time for murder. Let her dig herself out of harm's way. Don't we feel sorry for her? The less you know, the more you sleep. There's enough room for everyone. Emily was disliked at the dump, considered a stranger, and indeed, she didn't drink, didn't smoke, was cultured and polite. She purposely ignored the names of the bums and called them by their first names only. And those stupid glasses, she looked like a teacher. This nickname stuck to her for good. Despite the fact that the woman was in prison, she looked decent, and it was immediately obvious that she grew up and lived in a normal family. So the tramps did not understand how they could trade such a luxurious life for a vagrant one. What was the catch? They tried to find out something about her life, but Emily always just smiled enigmatically and kept quiet. But anyway, the tramps had their own laws. They believed that anyone could become homeless, even a janitor, even a broker, even a banker, and if a person had served time, it was clearly not worth prying into their souls. Emily was squeamish about sleeping in garbage dumps or dwelling on heating pipes, so she took up residence in an abandoned house on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't much of a dwelling, and the roof was leaking in many places, and the furnace was smoking, but it was better than living on the street. There was a half-rotten socket in the house, which was cunningly powered from the nearest lamppost. A couple of bottles of liquor from the local craftsman helped, but the power would come on closer to night and stay on till morning. Emily brought a crate from the junkyard and used it as a table next to the depressed couch. A rope was stretched out next to the stove to dry things, so she tried to create some semblance of normal life. She even had some linens. A market vendor had given them to her, old and shabby, stitched up in places, but she was grateful for that too. Unlike the other tramps, Emily did not beg, but earned her own bread. She collected cardboard and bottles and handed them in to collection points. Sometimes she was asked at the market to sort vegetables from rottenness or to help wash the floors at the train station. It didn't pay much, but it was better than nothing. Molly, the janitor at the gas station on the corner, let her into the shower once a week, pitied her in her own motherly way, and even gave her some of the cream that had expired and been forgotten by one of the customers. Emily got the hang of laundry too. She heated water on the stove in a bucket, dried her clothes there too. But she hadn't had much luck lately. Emily could barely scrape together enough for tea and a bun. Today too, judging by the disgruntled faces of the vagrants, the dump was not crowded. They must have already checked everything. But there was no way out, and the woman began to move deeper, looking through and shoveling all kinds of junk. Suddenly something squeaked behind a huge pile of construction debris. The woman wondered, what could it be? Did some freak throw a kitten in a bag again? This, unfortunately, was not uncommon. People were sometimes astonishing in their cruelty, as they did not just throw away blind kittens or puppies, but also tied them tightly in a sack. Repeatedly, tramps rescued such half-dead foundlings, tried to nurse them back to health. Some were even lucky and grew into healthy cats or dogs. Emily leaned over, raked through the pile of garbage, and gasped. There was not a kitten in there at all, but a cell phone. It was beeping, letting her know the battery was low. Emily looked around. No one seemed to be around, and quickly slipped her find into her pocket. After rummaging around for an hour more and gathering enough bottles to buy her a pie and some tea, she headed out of the dump, but not to her shack at all, but to the heating mains. She had an acquaintance there, Ginger. In fact, the guy's name was Robert. Emily greeted the bum. "Hello, Robert, can you help me? Here, my phone is dead, and I've lost my charger." Ginger looked at her closely, and of course, immediately realized that the phone was either found or stolen, because by definition the tramp could not have such a cool device, but decided not to interfere and help the woman. "Now, wait, maybe I'll pick something up. You owe me one." Emily didn't hesitate to give him all the change she had earned today. She went home through the market. She was lucky enough to find 6 whole potatoes and 2 apples in the trash today. She brought them to her cabin and began to cook them in their cores by heating the stove. The phone, meanwhile, was charging. Emily ate dinner. It was getting dark outside. She decided to see what was on the phone, whose phone it belonged to. Fortunately for her, there was no lock on it. No pictures either. The old owner had probably just deleted everything and thrown the old toy away as a waste of time. She mechanically went through all the folders from Nothing to Do and suddenly stumbled on one where there was a video. The woman turned it on out of curiosity, started watching, and almost screamed. The video showed her dead husband, and with him some very young girl. Emily shook her head. No way. This is some kind of nonsense. Judging by the date below, the event took place a month ago. So her husband, William, is alive and well, and not coughing. Not only that, he's living it up, married someone else, while she served 6 years in the penitentiary for his murder, with no money and no roof over her head. Emily was indignant. What a bastard. How did he pull it all off? It's unbelievable. It's impossible. Of course I didn't kill him, but the blood on the knife was his, wasn't it? Forensics confirmed it. What a twist. The woman collapsed on the couch and sobbed with hopelessness. The details of her life and that terrible evening immediately came to mind. In fact, Emily was not a tramp. On the contrary, her family was very wealthy. Her mother, Cindy, was fortunate in her time to marry a Pole, Leo Goldman, the owner of an outerwear factory. That is why her daughter was given the unusual name of Emily. The girl grew up in prosperity, bathed in love and attention of loved ones. She had a personal tutor, and even a chauffeur. Her father was quite strict and made sure that his daughter behaved appropriately, did not disgrace the family, and studied only at the top of her class. After graduating from a prestigious private school, Emily went to university to study foreign languages and dreamed of becoming a translator. Her father supported her aspirations. The profession is good, prestigious, and lucrative. It was out of the question to live in a dormitory. Her parents put her in a separate cozy apartment, having bought it specially for this purpose. All the students were jealous of Emily. She lived like a queen in an apartment. All her things were imported and of good quality, and she always had money for pocket money and more. Like all girls her age, Emily, of course, dreamed of a prince and true love to tears. But despite the wealth, intelligence, and good looks, there was no line of suitors to her. First, her classmates considered her a nerd. This image was complemented by glasses, which Emily hated and was ashamed of. But her father was adamant, believing that vision is more important, and scolded his daughter when she deliberately did not wear them. Secondly, she never went to youth parties, never smoked, and never even tried to drink. A black sheep, that's for sure. Not only that, her father kept a vigilant eye on her surroundings and screened out what he thought were unsuitable applicants. Emily graduated with flying colors, and her father had just begun to get her into work to negotiate with suppliers and clients when an irreparable tragedy struck. My parents were on their way back from the country house in their car and had a terrible accident. A huge truck crashed into them at full speed. No one survived that meat grinder. Emily screamed with grief, pain, and bereavement. So, overnight, the young girl lost her parents, leaving her an orphan and a very rich heiress. Like it or not, she had to take the reins of government into her own hands. She slowly coped with this task, helped by her father's faithful companion, Ethan. He patiently coached the girl, teaching her the finer points of the business and correcting annoying blunders, and gradually the business got on well. The staff at first resented, they say, whether the result of a snotty girl, and then began to respect her, even feared for a very strict character. She worked to her credit and demanded the same from others. Stylish haircut and glasses and expensive frames gave her the image of a serious businesswoman. Finally, it seems that her personal life got better too. She met William Emily at a fashion show, where she was studying the trends of the last season to start sewing a fashion collection. The man made a pleasant impression on her. He was witty, gallant, and looked 100%. He introduced himself as a novice designer. After the show, the gentleman suggested, "Would you mind having dinner with me at a nice Italian restaurant? I'd be happy to have such a lovely lady to brighten up my bachelor's evening." Emily glowed, for, in fact, it was the first date in her life. And of course, she said yes. She liked William very much. The evening was divine. They ate oysters, drank wine, and listened to live music. At the very end, William was brave enough to ask Emily to a slow dance. He moved very well and confidently twirled his partner. They were enviously looked at by the restaurant customers. When the music ended, he kissed her hand and mysteriously said, "Thank you for the evening. You're a delight. I haven't had such a good time in a long time. I hope to see you again. Leave me a phone number and I'll definitely call you." Emily was finally embarrassed and gave him her card, waved and jumped into the cab that pulled up. William studied the business card carefully. It said that Emily was the director of an outerwear company. The brand was nationally renowned. He smiled mysteriously and hid it securely in his breast pocket. Emily was up all night without sleep. She couldn't forget her beau and wondered naively if he would call her or not. William did not call, but sent a huge basket of scarlet roses and a note to her office by courier. "To the most charming princess, from her faithful knight. See you Saturday at 8 o'clock at the same place. William." Emily's heart was beating like crazy. She was flattered by such a gift and decided that it was love. And how else could it be? Very quickly, a love affair began between the young people, which quickly turned into a big wedding. William was sympathetic to the fact that Emily left her parents' last name and even decided to take his wife's last name. "Honey, the last name Goldman must not disappear. From now on, I too will be a Goldman, just like our future children." Emily was moved to tears. "What a sensitive and understanding fiancé I have." At first, everything was fabulous. Declarations of love, fervent and passionate nights, William whispering such words to her that she flew to heaven from happiness and was glad that she was so lucky to have a husband. His mother, Wendy, also sang and lied faithfully, realizing what a tidbit her son had snatched. But only a couple of years passed and things began to gradually change for the worse. All this time, the couple could not have a child. The husband constantly reproached Emily for it, and her mother-in-law added fuel to the fire. "Oh, I'll die, and I won't get to see my grandchildren. What's the matter, William? Is there a problem with your wife?" Emily was angry, nervous, and very worried about it. And really, why can't she get pregnant? But no matter how many examinations she underwent, the doctors only said that the woman was physically perfectly healthy. It got worse. William began to afford to be rude sometimes, to come in late and tipsy, and to smell a mile away of women's perfume. Emily demanded an explanation, freaked out, but the cunning husband always found excuses for everything and twisted as he could. Marriage bed has also long cooled. Emily, feminine sense, knew that her husband had a mistress, but could not prove anything. She had no one to talk to and consult with. In business, as you know, there are no friends, and since her father had carefully controlled her environment in the past, there had been no female friends since her college days. Emily, though she was a fairly calm and balanced woman, had been taught by her father since childhood that no one should be allowed to walk all over her, so she was hurt and offended that her husband had behaved so pig-headedly. She was not going to tolerate such behavior, and so she told him on his forehead in front of her mother-in-law, "William, I'm not satisfied with your attitude toward me. If you've fallen out of love with me, then let's get a divorce. I don't intend to live like this." Both were speechless, and my mother-in-law immediately started beating. "Emelisa, what are you thinking? William loves you, I can tell. He's just going through a hard time. He's not getting along with his work. Don't get too excited." But the woman was even more enraged that her mother-in-law was defending her wayward son, and she said sharply, "Your son is always having trouble with work. Maybe it's because he's just lazy and doesn't want to do anything. Why should he? He's doing just fine on my money and with my respectable name. And with his drinking, I see, everything is fine. I'm sick of it all. I'm filing for divorce." The woman felt so bad and disgusted that she ran out of the house and went to her parents' grave. She cried for a long time, telling everything and trying to figure out if she had made the right decision. The woman arrived home very late. To her surprise, William was home, and there was a surprise waiting for her. Rose petals were scattered all over the bedroom, scented candles were burning, and champagne was foaming in the glasses. "Emily, my love, I was wrong. I admit it. We've been distant from each other lately, and I really haven't been paying much attention to you. It's just a little family crisis. In fact, I love you just as much as I did before. We just need to refresh our feelings a bit. I promise to get better and not do that again. Let's remember how good we were together. Just you and me. Please, have some champagne with me." The stunned woman was unspeakably happy at this news. Her heart was relieved. "Thank God, he's come to his senses, so I mean a lot to him. And he really loves me." She took the glass, and they drank to the bottom, to the brunch. From there, everything went fuzzy. The sounds went muffled, and she passed out. Everything that happened to her next was like a horror movie or the most horrible nightmare. Emily woke up in the early morning from the incessant pounding on the door. The woman couldn't understand anything. Her head was pounding. It hurt to even look at the light, and her arms and legs felt cotton candy, and as if they were alien. She barely, holding onto the walls and swaying, went to open the door, muttering to herself, "I'm coming. Why are you knocking like that?" The woman was simply stunned to see operatives and neighbors on the doorstep, with her angry mother-in-law standing behind them. The police provided her with an ID and began, "Hello, are you Citizen Goldman, Emily?" "Yeah. What happened?" "Your neighbors reported that something strange had been going on in your house all night. Wild shouting, cursing, then someone walking around, carrying something that looked like a body, and so on into the morning. They distinctly heard you threatening your spouse with violence. Let us go in and see for ourselves, shall we?" Emily shrugged her shoulders. "Come in. What's this nonsense? I made up with my husband last night, and he even threw me a romantic evening. Only I think I had a little too much champagne. I blacked out and don't remember anything at all." Then she heard shouting behind her. "Oh, my God. There's blood all over the place. Where's my son? What have you done with him? Murderer." Emily couldn't understand anything, rubbed her eyes, put on her glasses, and almost screamed in horror. There were blood stains in the bedroom, and they were fresh and bright. The woman shook like a fever and screamed, I don't know what it is. I got sick last night and fell asleep. I don't know what's going on and where William is. Have you all gone mad? I couldn't kill him. I love him very much." At that moment, the police opened the closet with blood on the door and started throwing out everything they saw. They got to the underwear drawer and emptied its contents. A bloody knife wrapped in sheets fell out among the underwear. Wendy was screaming like a madwoman. "Yeah. Oh, yes, she did. Just the day before yesterday, she said she wanted a divorce. My William begged her not to get divorced. On his knees. She must have changed her mind about the divorce, realized it wouldn't work and decided to kill her. I know how jealous you were. You've been throwing tantrums every day. Tell me where my son is. How could you?" The cops snapped handcuffs on her wrists and said menacingly, "You are being held on suspicion of the murder of your husband, Citizen William Goldman. Come with us." Then there were endless interrogations, threats, intimidation, just so she would sign a confession to something she hadn't done. Emily cried, begged me to believe her, because William's body had never been found. And where could she, a frail woman, put it? What nonsense. It was a show, and so cheap that it was even disgusting. Emily had asked to see her deputy, her father's trusted companion, who would surely have helped, or at least hired a proper lawyer, but she was refused even that for reasons she did not understand. So she got a free lawyer who did nothing but gibberish. "There's nowhere to go. They have too much evidence. You had better sign a confession. It will mitigate your punishment." Emily was exploding. "What am I going to be punished for? Hear me. I didn't do it. I didn't kill my husband. Are you all deaf and blind? Why don't you believe me?" But he's at it again. "Then why was there a bloody knife with your fingerprints and your husband's blood stains in your bedroom?" The forensic examination confirmed that it was his blood. The woman sobbed. "How should I know? I told you, I had a glass of champagne with my husband, and the next thing you know, I can't remember. I don't remember anything." All this talking and arguing went on endlessly, like a broken record. As a result, at Emily's trial, despite the fact that all the evidence was only circumstantial, her husband's body had never been found, and she had never signed a confession, she was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Emily remembered forever the shock of being brought into the cell, the musty, stinky air, the gloomy, damp walls, the 4 bunks, and the burnt-out convicts sitting on them, who only smirked. "Oh, boss, did you bring a new girl?" It was a nightmare for Emily, who had never even lived in a dormitory, let alone a prison. At first, our heroine drank nothing, ate nothing, reacted to nothing, and sobbed all day long, turning her back to the wall. The inmates were sarcastic and tried to provoke her. "Hey, girlfriend, what article? Why are you so quiet? Or don't you respect the staff? Turn your head, talk to the people." It was as if Emily couldn't hear them. There was only one thought running through her head. "It's over. There's nothing left to live for. I'd rather hang myself than spend my years with these female bloodsuckers." Angered by the silence, Vanessa climbed off the top bunk and pounced on Emily to reprimand the stubborn and taciturn newcomer, but she suddenly jumped up and screamed like a madwoman. "You want to do me? Then do it. You'd only be doing me a favor. I'm dying to die as it is. I've never killed anybody. You know, never laid a finger on anybody in my life, and they're pinning it all on me. Leave me alone, everybody. I hate you." The woman turned back against the wall and sobbed in helplessness and despair, while the cellmate in charge, Kelly, shouted at her cellmates. "All of you, don't touch the teacher," I said, "or else she'll really get her hands on herself. I don't want any trouble." From that day on, Kelly took care of Emily, never let her be hurt. The image of this sweet, intelligent woman in expensive glasses with a murderer did not fit in her mind. Clearly, there was nothing to it. And someone was just really messing with her. Kelly was teaching her how to survive in the zone, because she had a lot of experience herself. Don't be silly, just eat. It won't make anyone feel better if you die. Set yourself a goal, for example, to get revenge on your abuser, and live for it. Also, show your teeth. Don't be a jerk or you'll get trampled, and never agree to snitch on anyone, even if the warden will offer you favors. Snitch and whistleblowers don't like it. They'll bully you for the rest of your sentence. And so went the gray prison routine, waking, working, walking, and bedtime, and so on for 6 years straight. Gradually, Emily got the hang of it. It was easier for her to sew than the others, since she had worked in the field, so she could cut and stitch in no time at all. In addition, Emily began to help her fellow inmates to become prettier and better, adjusting the shapeless robes and coats, making them intricate hairstyles, because a woman is a woman, and even in such terrible conditions, she wants to be beautiful. On her release, Emily had no idea what to do. At first, she went home, but she was kicked out by complete strangers who lived there, who didn't care who the owner was or what the prisoner was talking about. They had the sale papers, and that was it. Emily pleaded, "Listen, at least give me my things. At least something. I'm totally naked and barefoot. Have mercy on me." But they just closed the door in front of her, threatening to call the police if they saw her again. A woman went into her company. Same story. It had long since been resold. The management had changed, and the owner was now one Edward. He refused to talk to the tramp and told her to throw her out and never let her on the doorstep. She was standing under the windows of her home office crying, and the old security guard, Serti, who knew her well by sight and had always greeted her in a friendly way before, now turned away squeamishly and pretended not to know her. Emily had no choice but to vagabond. She couldn't stand being in her hometown, where everyone knew her, and was terribly ashamed that she was now a pauper. So the woman migrated to the neighboring town, having had a lucky bus ride as a hare. For a year already, she had been wandering around the dumps and living in an old house near an industrial zone. She often cried, remembering her parents, repented, especially to her father, for not recognizing the scoundrel and her beloved husband in time. It was as if something in her was broken. Inside there was nothing but blackness, because it was clear that now it was her destiny to drag out a miserable existence until the end of life. Often she wondered if such a life was necessary at all. And there were thoughts of ending it all in one fell swoop, but she still did not dare to do it. And now, after finding her ex-husband's phone number and learning that he was alive and well, for the first time in these many years of deprivation and suffering, she finally awoke some feelings. She was possessed by anger and fierce hatred. Gone was that humbly doomed state of complete indifference to everything. Emily decided, whatever happens, I'll go to the police with the phone and see if they will help. She got dressed, combed her hair, made herself look more or less divine, and went to the police station. Her heart was pounding, wondering what they would tell her. Would they believe her or not? Would they throw her out as they did everywhere else and laugh at her? What if they do? At first, they waited at the window for a long time, looking at the certificate of criminal record and her confused tales about her revived husband and some phone they had found. The staff clearly did not take the poor woman's words seriously. "Oh, look, don't mess with our heads here. What kind of statement? Just say that you found the phone and you want a reward for it, so that it is enough to buy a bottle." Emily almost cried. "What kind of people are you? I don't drink at all. Why don't you believe me? Everywhere I go, I get screwed. They set me up, you know." At the commotion, Andrew, the investigator, a stern man with an ugly and repulsive scar on his cheek, came out of his office and asked menacingly, "What is this circus? What's going on?" Andrew, who was sitting on duty, was lounging around, reluctantly answering. She said that her husband had risen from the dead, and it turned out that bad people had set her up. "I'm not even going to get into all this." The man looked intently at the poor woman with the glasses, who was crying profusely, and somehow he felt so sorry for her that his heart ached. This never happened to him normally. He suddenly shouted at the man on duty, "What am I going to be punished for? Hear me, I didn't do it. I didn't kill my husband. Are you all deaf and blind? Why don't you believe me? But he's at it again. Then why was there a bloody knife with your fingerprints and your husband's blood stains in your bedroom? The forensic examination confirmed that it was his blood. The woman sobbed. How should I know? I told you, I had a glass of champagne with my husband, and the next thing you know, I can't remember. I don't remember anything. All this talking and arguing went on endlessly, like a broken record. As a result, at Emily's trial, despite the fact that all the evidence was only circumstantial, her husband's body had never been found, and she had never signed a confession, she was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Emily remembered forever the shock of being brought into the cell, the musty, stinky air, the gloomy, damp walls, the 4 bunks, and the burnt-out convicts sitting on them, who only smirked. Oh, boss, did you bring a new girl? It was a nightmare for Emily, who had never even lived in a dormitory, let alone a prison. At first, our heroine drank nothing, ate nothing, reacted to nothing, and sobbed all day long, turning her back to the wall. The inmates were sarcastic and tried to provoke her. Hey, girlfriend, what article? Why are you so quiet? Or don't you respect the staff? Turn your head, talk to the people. It was as if Emily couldn't hear them. There was only one thought running through her head. It's over. There's nothing left to live for. I'd rather hang myself than spend my years with these female bloodsuckers. Angered by the silence, Vanessa climbed off the top bunk and pounced on Emily to reprimand the stubborn and taciturn newcomer, but she suddenly jumped up and screamed like a madwoman. You want to do me? Then do it. You'd only be doing me a favor. I'm dying to die as it is. I've never killed anybody. You know, never laid a finger on anybody in my life, and they're pinning it all on me. Leave me alone, everybody. I hate you. The woman turned back against the wall and sobbed in helplessness and despair, while the cellmate in charge, Kelly, shouted at her cellmates. All of you, don't touch the teacher, I said, or else she'll really get her hands on herself. I don't want any trouble. From that day on, Kelly took care of Emily, never let her be hurt. The image of this sweet, intelligent woman in expensive glasses with a murderer did not fit in her mind. Clearly, there was nothing to it, and someone was just really messing with her. Kelly was teaching her how to survive in the zone because she had a lot of experience herself. Don't be silly, just eat. It won't make anyone feel better if you die. Set yourself a goal, for example, to get revenge on your abuser, and live for it. Also, show your teeth. Don't be a jerk or you'll get trampled, and never agree to snitch on anyone, even if the warden will offer you favors. Snitch and whistleblowers don't like it. They'll bully you for the rest of your sentence. And so went the gray prison routine, waking, working, walking, and bedtime, and so on for 6 years straight. Gradually, Emily got the hang of it. It was easier for her to sew than the others, since she had worked in the field, so she could cut and stitch in no time at all. In addition, Emily began to help her fellow inmates to become prettier and better, adjusting the shapeless robes and coats, making them intricate hairstyles, because a woman is a woman, and even in such terrible conditions, she wants to be beautiful. On her release, Emily had no idea what to do. At first, she went home, but she was kicked out by complete strangers who lived there, who didn't care who the owner was or what the prisoner was talking about. They had the sale papers, and that was it. Andrew, why do you allow yourself to be rude to citizens and not take a statement from them? Is she not a person in your opinion? Take the statement immediately and bring the woman to my office. I'll talk to her myself. The policeman grumbled unhappily. What's the matter with him? Did something bite him? Here's a pen and paper. Write down what you saw on your phone and go to room 5. Andrew wants to deal with you, so be my guest. Emily wiped away her tears and began to write her statement, mentally thanking the stern man. Then she went to his office. Andrew took another long, hard look at her and started hard. "Emily, let's be clear and to the point. Tell everything in order, but no lies, just the way it was. If you want me to help you." The woman exhaled and began her story from beginning to end, showed the record in her phone and the date underneath and summed it up. "I did my time for nothing, you know. I've been through so much. Not only that, my mother-in-law sold my company and my house illegally, and I went from being a rich heiress to a bum. And that bastard is getting married again, and he's alive and well. And no one cares about this outrage. Everybody is kicking me and kicking me out, and I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall. You're my last hope. Otherwise, I'd rather kill myself than live like this." Andrew quietly replied, "I promise I'll double-check all these facts, and I'll let you know the results. Where can I find you?" Emily responded, "I've got an empty house on the outskirts with a red roof, near the industrial zone on New York. Like a house, a shack. That's where I live for now." The operative suddenly took out his wallet and pulled out some money. "Here, take this. It's enough for food and warm clothes. Wait for me there. Don't go anywhere. I will find out everything and find you, and I will take this phone to investigate." The woman looked at the investigator with such gratitude and babbled, "Thank you so much for believing and responding to someone else's misfortune. I thought no one would help me." When Emily left, Andrew summoned 2 operatives and outlined the situation. They only smirked. "You're unbelievable. She'll drink all your money in a jiffy with her friends, and she probably made up this story as she went along, just to get some pity and to get at least a kopeck. We know those bums. Since when did you get so sentimental? It's not like you." The investigator suddenly frowned and shushed them. "She's not lying. I have a gut feeling. I believe her. She doesn't look like a hardened convict or a scoundrel. I can smell them a mile away. You do not understand. You have not experienced grief, so do not judge without understanding." Joyful Emily ran to the thrift store and bought some old but warm clothes, a jacket, boots, and a hat, because my feet were freezing in just a windbreaker, and some holey sneakers. Then ran to the supermarket, for the first time in a long time, and bought meat, milk, potatoes, and even splurged on a small chocolate bar. She hadn't eaten normally in ages, as she had before, and enjoyed roast potatoes and meat for dinner. For the first time in all this time, a ray of hope began to flicker in the woman's mind. What if this stern investigator would really help? Is there really a chance that the scoundrel will be apprehended and punished? Andrew wasn't always this way, stern and withdrawn. It was the aftermath of a personal trauma. 3 years ago, he lost his wife and 5-year-old son, James, in tragic circumstances. That's how life was divided for him into before and after. Before, happy family, loving wife Julia, and the sea of affection. After, longing, loneliness, and stupor. After the tragedy, the man went to work, hardened, withdrawn into himself, became harsh and tough. He caught bandits 24 hours a day, and at night he howled with boredom and drank bitter coffee and smoked packs of strong tobacco. Andrew was notorious for his honesty and incorruptibility, but also for his excessive meticulousness, for when he got hold of a string, he wouldn't rest until he'd unraveled the whole tangle. So today, after talking to this unhappy, fate-stricken woman, like a sheepdog, he immediately picked up the trail and began his own investigation. First of all, he checked all the facts Emily had told him about, and they all came together. She really was the daughter of a businessman, a rich heiress, owned a large company, and had a huge mansion. Then he pulled her file out of the archives, began to reread it, and he just gasped. Everything had been pulled out by the ears, sewn with white threads, a lot of inconsistencies, bloopers. How could it all be taken at face value? It was all negligence, or is it worse than that? The next step was for Andrew to find out about Emily's husband and find out that he was indeed alive and well, and had recently married apparently another rich fool, a scheme exactly like the one with his previous wife. He ran the cheeky guy through the database and found that he was long wanted for fraud. That's the way it is. He wanders from town to town, changes names, and pulls off the same scam with the poor naive fools, while he always gets away with it. Andrew gathered the operatives together, told them everything he had learned, and added, "I'm going to go over to that insolent man's house and see if I can get him to talk, and I'm going to record everything on my tape recorder." The guys offered to help. "Andrew, why are you going alone? Let us back you up. You never know. It's obvious that he's a cunning bug, since it's not the first time he's not afraid to do something like this." The investigator brushed it off. "Come on, I can handle it. It's not the first time. We've taken more than one of these crooks. Here's the deal. If I make a call to you, you go right away with an assault team. It's not far from here, just in case." So they did. Andrew went to Emily's ex-husband, William, in an expensive mansion. The smug, glossy turkey opened the door and held out in surprise. "Who are you? And to whom?" The investigator introduced himself and showed his ID. He went inside. William felt absolutely no anxiety or danger and began. "So, to what do I owe the honor, Mr. Investigator?" Andrew grinned. "So here's the thing, sir. We were recently approached by citizen Emily Goldman, and she is very interested in how it is that you were suddenly resurrected in another city and under a different name while she was in jail for your pseudo-murder. Here, look at this footage. What a beautiful wedding. Charming rich bride, daughter of a dead banker. Where is she now? Can you tell me? Is she under investigation, by any chance? Why don't you change your scheme? Or are you so sure of your impunity? You shouldn't have. I brought up Emily's case. It's obviously fabricated, and if I make an effort, I'll break it up in no time. But you, my dear fellow, you'll have to answer for all these shady dealings. You can't fool women's heads and then ruin their lives. Come with me to the police station. Write a confession, and the court will take it into account." Of course, William muled, began to lie and twist. His eyes began to run, and he began to jump up and down like a frying pan. "Listen, Chief, let's make a deal. I'll pay you very generously, and you'll let the whole thing slide. Why would you mess with a convict? What good would it do you? I won't hurt you, really." Andrew frowned. "You're out of luck. I don't take bribes, and Emily is just like everyone else, and has the same rights." William tried again to persuade the investigator. "There are no people who don't take it. Believe me. It's just a question of price. Everyone to whom I offered just like you refused, and then nothing, all done as it should. So come on, agree." Andrew got up and stood up. "I thought I made it clear. I don't take bribes. Get ready. I'm waiting. You have 5 minutes." William guessed that the investigator was obviously alone, without backup, and decided to go for broke. He stood up unhurriedly, then sharply grabbed a heavy ashtray from the table and dropped it on Andrew's head. Andrew shrieked, staggered, and collapsed on the floor, but did not lose consciousness. Fumbling for the phone in his pocket, he managed to press the call button, the pre-selected number, to let the guys know they needed to get out. William, wasting no time, rushed to the kitchen to get a knife to finish what he had started. But the bastard did not make it to the kitchen. Andrew caught up with him near the door and gave him a good thrashing from the right. "No matter what you say." But there are no ex-paratroopers. On the floor, the investigator began to twist the bastard's arms, not allowing him to break free. Help arrived just in time. Andrew would have lost consciousness himself, because the head wound was serious. The villain was taken to the station, handcuffed, and the investigator was taken by ambulance to the hospital. Emily got tired of waiting, so she decided to go to the precinct to ask how the case was going, and if she could find out anything. When the officer on duty at the window told her that the investigator in charge of her case had been taken to the hospital, she immediately rushed there, finding out the floor and the room. Emily bought some fruit on the way and timidly entered the room. The operative was half lounging on the bed with his head wrapped in bandages, reading some papers. When he saw the woman, he smiled and waved. She handed him a package. "Hello, Andrew. This is for you. Here you go. Don't get any ideas. It's all fresh. I just bought it. From the bottom of my heart. Did I hurt you so much? Does it hurt a lot? So, did you manage to nail William?" She touched his head to correct a slightly protruding bandage, and it was like an electric shock. Such was the force of attraction. The investigator took off her glasses and looked into the huge, beautiful, and so inexpressibly sad eyes. His soul, hardened by years of hardship and loss, was suddenly stirred by a wave of tenderness and warmth. They stared at each other in silence for a few seconds, and that look was far more sincere than 1,000 declarations of love or kisses. Then the investigator woke up and began to talk. "Yes, you had the misfortune to marry that scoundrel. Here I am, reading the reports. Your husband, now William, is a swindler and conman of the First Guild. There were 2 cases before you, and according to the same scheme he planned to swindle another woman, and we just prevented him. It turns out that he spared no money and paid everyone involved in the case, even the neighbors, who were in cahoots with him. That's why no one listened to you. Everything was bought. You'll have to confront him. That's the only way to do it. We'll find out how the bastard did it. My head's fine. I'll go home tomorrow. I don't have time to be idle. There's a lot to do." Emily lowered her eyes. "Thank you again. Finally, I hope the scoundrel gets punished for everything. Yeah, I almost forgot. In my bag, in my right pocket, take the keys with the green keychain. It's from my country house, not far from here, about 20 minutes from the city. Stay there for a while. I don't need it yet anyway. It's not right for a woman to live in an abandoned hovel. You don't belong there. And I'll try to help you get your house back, and if I can, the company, because all the deals were illegal." Emily, in a burst of emotion, took the man's hand and said, "You're my guardian angel. No one helped but you, not even listened to me. You come to me, tell me how things are going. I'll be waiting for you." Suddenly, without expecting it, she kissed the man on his unshaven prickly cheek and ran out of the room. And Andrew lay there smiling dreamily for a long time. Emily's kiss burned on his cheek for a long time. The sad and so beautiful eyes of this fragile woman, who firmly stuck in his soul, stood in front of his eyes. Emily moved into the investigator's cottage and began to settle in. She so enjoyed putting things in order, washing curtains, washing windows and floors, and finally sleeping on a normal bed in a warm house. Soon Andrew arrived and took her to a confrontation. On the way, Emily suddenly asked, "Can I get cleaned up somehow? I just want that scoundrel to see that he couldn't break me, you know. I don't want to look like a beggar, although, as a matter of fact, I do." Andrew spluttered his hands. "It's true. I didn't think of that at all. I'm sorry. I hadn't considered it. It's really important. Maybe then he'll tell more in anger. What can I do? I'll take you to our makeup artist. She's a great woman, and she can cut hair and paint and do makeup. We often use her services when we perform all sorts of special operations." An hour later, a completely different Emily emerged. She had her hair cut and dyed blonde, had a refreshing makeup job applied to her face, had her glasses picked up again like before, and was dressed in a pantsuit that fit her figure tightly and emphasized her perfect form. Andrew opened his mouth in amazement and even whistled. "Wow, you are just unrecognizable. You're so beautiful. All right, let's go. We're running out of time." William was being led to a confrontation with Emily. He was expecting to see a lowly bum and prisoner in rags and no teeth, but when he entered the office, he was speechless. Fresh, stylishly dressed, and so beautiful, Emily was sitting there smiling as if nothing had happened. She said wryly, "Well, hello, darling. Didn't expect to see you like this, did you? Did you think I took everything, put you in jail, and there's no more Emily. One thing I don't understand is, what about your blood on the knife and in the house? Or did you buy the forensics too? Wouldn't that surprise me? And what did you drug me with? How could you possibly pull this off? William understood that he had nothing to hide, so he began to tell the story. I'm not as stupid as you think. You can't buy independent expertise. I had to cut my arm on purpose with the same knife. Here, even a scar remained, but the result was worth it. You couldn't get clean. Just one powerful drug in a glass of champagne, and you slept until morning, without disturbing me to carry out my plan. It was great, wasn't it? After you went to jail, there was a lot of talk in town about how a rich businesswoman killed her husband in the night and hid his body somewhere. By the way, keep in mind, you don't have children and never will. I was the one who slipped the birth control drug into your food, which leads to infertility. Barely got it out of 10 hands. It was never part of my plan to babysit. Emily was shocked by what she heard, shaking like a fever, and she said, "Why did you need all this? Tell me, what kind of animal are you? You've been living off me, haven't you? What did you miss? I love you so much. You've never worked a day in your life." The rascal only smirked. "What have I been missing? Your freedom and your millions. I didn't love you for 1 second. It was your own fault. If you hadn't insisted on getting a divorce, I wouldn't have even thought about it. I would have kept feeding you pills and living the life I wanted. But you left me no choice. Why? You get everything and I get nothing. My mother thinks it's unfair and I deserve more. She's the one who suggested I put you behind bars and make it all go away without a problem. I should have finished with you. I'm so afraid they'll start digging around. Honest people like that." William looked at the investigator with hatred. "I don't understand one thing. How did you manage to find that ill-fated phone?" "I threw it away. I think I erased everything on my phone, but there's still one video left. I'm so screwed. If it wasn't for that, everything would have worked out for me and that stupid Lola. And you never would have known I was alive." Tears came to Emily's eyes, and she said quietly, "I really hope you and your mother get the maximum sentence. You'll taste the prison stew too. And you'll feel everything I've been through in 6 years." The scoundrel was taken away, but Emily sat there in silence. Andrew cheered her up. "Well, don't get upset. I'll do my best to keep that bastard and his mother in jail for a long time." "That's okay. We'll fight again. We can try to review the case and restore justice. The conviction should be canceled. Of course, it's little consolation, considering what you've been through, but still. I'll take you home now, and we'll fight." Emily looked at him with such gratitude and asked again, "Did you say we will? You mean you won't leave me?" The investigator winked and replied, "Yes. I don't leave my own in trouble. That's not the character." From that day on, Emily's life began to change dramatically, all thanks to Andrew. He helped her in everything. They went through 100 circles of bureaucratic hell together and got her honest name, company, and house back. William and his mother have received the maximum terms, and the bribing judge who conducted the case has been also detained. He has had a nervous stroke, and after the trial he was treated in the prison hospital. The company was returned to the mistress, and she began by completely changing the staff. She thoroughly vetted all the candidates, for she did not want any traitors in her entourage. She missed her job so much that she plunged herself into it, developed her own models, and redesigned the logo and brand. She wanted to change everything, to start from scratch, to make people believe her again and not think she was an ex-convict. Emily agreed to give an interview to a local TV station, and an entire program was aired about her, telling the whole truth about how she had been lied to and set up by her former husband, and how she had suffered 6 years in prison for nothing. After that, hundreds of women who had suffered at the hands of their husbands began writing to her, asking her for advice and wondering how she had survived all that and not broken down. Emily was already on her feet and had decided to do one very important thing for herself. She bought 2 huge bags of food and drove to the same junkyard where she had recently obtained her bottles. The same tenants, Crab and Sour, were poking around there as usual. They were stunned when a richly dressed lady got out of a beautiful car and waved to them. She pulled out huge bags and gestured for them to come over. "Good afternoon, Alex and Nick. It's me, Emily. Don't you recognize me? Here, it's all for you. There's food and warm clothes. From the bottom of my heart, I do not forget the good things. Thank you for not kicking me out when I was in trouble and letting me look for food. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived." The crab whistled. "Is that really you, Emily? I never would have believed it. Such a solid madam. How is it that you were a beggar? Don't you understand? Thank you, from the bottom of my heart. An unexpected gift." The woman only waved goodbye to them and threw them a curt hand as she went. "It's a long story. Goodbye, guys." The bums waved at her too and pounced on the treats. Then they shared and tried on the new clothes with admiration and chorused for a long time. What a teacher! What a teacher! All this time, the woman and the investigator had a strange relationship. She literally worshipped him, respected him, and secretly loved him deeply. But for some reason, she was afraid to say out loud about her feelings. Andrew was much older than Emily, a widower, and was also shy to take the first step toward rapprochement, although he had long ago realized for himself that he did not need anyone else for nothing. The woman finally moved into her own house, made repairs there, and invited the investigator to visit her for the weekend. For shashliks, she tried so hard, pickled meat, cooked all sorts of delicious snacks, and even baked a huge cake herself. All these simple and mundane things were so much fun now. After years of imprisonment and wandering, she had learned to appreciate what she had. In the yard on the grounds, there was a long-built Russian bathhouse, but for some reason it had never been tried by the landlady. She had not had the time. Andrew was not without a reason either. He cooked amazingly delicious barbecue, and they sat savoring the treats and talked about everything. It was getting cold outside, and he was the first to suggest it. "Emily, why don't we go to the country house and talk and cook steak there?" The woman gladly accepted the invitation. "I'm all for it, especially since I don't know anything about these things, so I'm counting on you." Overcoming some shyness, Emily laid down on the bench in one sheet, and Andrew took a broom in his hands and lightly slapped her back with it. The woman cried out, and the frightened man suddenly lost his head and began to cover her whole body with kisses, whispering, "How beautiful you are. You're the best. I won't let anyone else have you. Just so you know, don't drag me away. Don't push me away. I'm in love with an old fool. You're my eyes." Emily, too, lost her head in the rush of emotion and responded to the caresses. No one knows how much time passed. The stove had long ago faded. The brooms were still lying untouched in the basin, and the couple still could not tear themselves away from each other. Both of them understood that they had waited so long for this moment, and they felt a real pleasure. Emily, hugging her beloved, whispered, "That's it. I've got you. I'm not letting you go either. This is your home now. I don't want to leave you for a minute. You hear me? Not even for a second." Andrew chuckled hoarsely. "Listen, I'm an old boar, and I snore awfully when I sleep on my back, and I have rheumatism. And anyway," but the woman didn't let him finish speaking and kissed him. "So let it be. You can grumble and snore all you want. I don't mind. I agree to be with you for better or for worse for the rest of my life." The couple got married and started living at Emily's house. Everything was fine. The only thing missing was that they both wanted a child. The woman remembered what that rascal William had told her about the pills he had given her, and she no longer even dreamed of becoming a mother, accepting her infertility. She thought long and hard and decided to take the desperate step of putting Andrew down. "Let's take a child from the orphanage, please. We are quite wealthy people. The cottage is huge, so we miss the stomping of children's feet and joyful laughter. I understand you've suffered terrible grief and lost your son, but after all, so much time has passed. Nothing can go back. So why not give a happy childhood abandoned kid? The man supported the idea. You know, my love, I've been thinking about it myself, because what are we living for? For children, not only those parents who gave life, but those who put their heart and soul into it. So my grandmother said. So I'm all for it. Then we'll go tomorrow. But let's not make any predictions in advance, or choose whom our heart will tell us to go to. So we did. We arrived at the orphanage, went into the playroom. There on the playmat, the little ones were fussing. Some were pushing a car around on the floor. Some were playing with dolls. There was a lot of noise and commotion, and only one skinny and sad little girl of about 3 was sitting quietly in the corner, not reacting to anyone. Emily asked the caregiver, "What's wrong with her? What's her name? Why isn't she playing with everyone?" She sighed and began to tell the story. "This is Maria. She's new to us. The thing is that she, unlike many people, comes from a fairly well-to-do family. But by some miracle, Maria is the only survivor. She, from the grief and shock, has ceased to speak at all. That's why she is not accepted into the group. It will be hard for her here. She's very domestic. You with it too, Torment. It is necessary to be seriously engaged. Not 1 and not 2 months. Plus to it, after all events, it began to limp. There was a fracture with displacement. Now the kids are laughing at her. She is a very problem child. So you have to look at others. For example, Emily and Andrew looked at each other and understood each other without words. They didn't listen to what the teacher was saying. So they walked over to the little girl. Emily sat down next to her on the bench and held out her hand. "Hi, I'm Emily, and this is Andrew, my husband. We're looking for a daughter, and we'd like you to be the one. I know how bad you're feeling right now, and you can't talk yet. Just nod if you want us to stay, or wave your head if you don't like us." The little girl raised her sad, round eyes at them, and timidly held out her little hand and put it in Emily's hand. And so they had a daughter, Maria. She immediately fell in love with Andrew, climbed on his lap, hugged him, and could sit like that for long hours, thinking about something of her own. The man would mollycoddle, stroke her head, and quietly tell her stories. It took half a year to make the girl an operation and straighten her leg after an incorrectly healed fracture. Then there were long trips to psychologists hoping to restore her voice. Doctors throw up their hands and say that the reason why the girl does not speak is psychological, the consequences of the accident and the death of her parents. They say that it will pass in time. Emily and Andrew surrounded the little girl with love and care, constantly gave her time, a lot of drawing, reading, and telling fairy tales. The woman always kissed her at night, hugged her, and repeated day after day, "My good girl, my dearest daughter, Daddy and I are happy to have you." One day, Emily started to clean the windows and stood on the stepladder. Maria was concentrating on drawing at her desk. Suddenly, Emily stumbled and flew down. She cried out in sharp pain and surprise. Maria immediately jumped up, knocking over the chair and scattering all the pencils, ran to her, began to hug her, helped her up, cried, and suddenly said, "Mommy, are you in pain?" Emily was so relieved that Maria was finally talking that she immediately forgot about the fall, picked Maria up in her arms, and began to kiss her. "My girl, you're talking. Say something else." Maria happily continued, "Is Dad coming home from work soon?" Andrew came home, and Maria came running out to him and started babbling. Daddy, you came. What did you buy me?" The dumbfounded man picked up the little girl and began to spin her around and tickle her. She laughed and hugged her father. Soon another joyful event happened in the Andrew family, which is nothing short of a miracle. Emily became pregnant. She had long ago stopped thinking about it and resigned herself to it, giving all her soul and love to Maria. And now such a blessing. Andrew treated his wife like a crystal vase. He dusted her off, called her 100 times a day, and asked how she was feeling. Because after his son died, he had no hope of becoming a father. His daughter was his inspiration, the light in the window. The couple was very worried how Maria would react to this news, whether she would be jealous of the baby or, God forbid, she would shut up again and stop talking. That is why they dragged it out to the last moment. And only when Emily's belly was clearly visible, Maria slyly looked at her and said, "Mommy, do you have a baby in your tummy? Like my Barbie. Am I going to have a baby sister or a brother?" The woman blushed like a schoolgirl and confessed, "What a clever little girl you are. Yes, daughter, soon you will be the eldest in the family. You will have a little brother or sister. You and I will feed him, bathe him, take him for walks, right? And when he grows up, you'll be friends with him. Are you excited?" The little girl jumped up and down and clapped her hands. "Hooray! I'm finally going to babysit my brother. I'm so bored alone. Does Daddy know? We have to make him happy." Emily's heart was lifted, and a stone was lifted from her soul. Thank God. Maria was happy and normal to hear the news of a new addition to the family. Surprisingly, Emily's pregnancy was going great. No morning sickness or swelling. The family went for walks every day in the park. Maria jumped on trampolines and swung on swings. She finally came alive and was a completely normal and happy baby. Andrew and Emily sat on a bench in a shady alley and watched their frolicsome daughter. At such moments, the woman felt absolute happiness and felt that it was mutual. Andrew also thawed out during this time, and from a stern and reserved husband, turned into an open and loving husband and father. The burden of past misfortune released him completely. His life was full again. He knew that two loving hearts loved him and were waiting at home, and that's the most valuable thing.